trying to black out as much as you can prior to bed to simulate darkness and get as minimal lighting on as you can to function, to have your dinner. That's going to help solidify your bedtime routine and your light exposure to help get you a better sleep. Kensor says, I work at shifts. So 1 week I wake up at 5 a.m. and work until 2:30 p.m. Next week I work from 2:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. This messes up my sleep schedule and eating times. Yep, absolutely. Any tips on keeping them in check, so to speak? So I'll point you to a good resource. His name is Sachin Panda. He has a book called The Circadian Code, I think. I have not read the book. I've heard some of his stuff. Sachin Panda is basically a... there's his name right there. He is a circadian rhythm researcher. He's done a lot of really good rat studies. Obviously, they're not in humans, but they've been really well done, really well designed rat studies, to where he basically showed a lot of benefits to things like intermittent fasting and how to do some practical takeaways for trying to set your circadian rhythm for things like being a shift worker. So what would I suggest for you? He doesn't really have a preference on his shifting sleep schedule. So I would suggest trying to maintain as much of a normal-ish sleep schedule as you can. So the things that I would do in terms of trying to maintain good sleep, I would try to maintain the same light exposure habits leading up to bedtime and leading to when you wake up. Those two things I think you should focus on. So basically what I mean is when you finish your shift, regardless of what time it is, or like, let me think how to phrase this actually. Let's go with like the 5 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Okay, so you're probably not gonna sleep right away. You probably have to go to bed early those nights to wake up at 5 a.m. and be rested. So you might sleep at 8 p.m. So what I mean is the hours leading up to bed, an hour or two or three, you should have the same nighttime bedtime routine regardless of when your schedule is, of when you actually wake up. So light exposure is really important. Light exposure, probably the best thing to do is wake up. When you wake up, get as much bright daylight exposure as you can, whatever's practical. Go brush your teeth by a window. Go outside, like first thing you do, go outside, walk your dog, or go for a quick walk around the block, or drink your coffee outside, have breakfast at a window and stare outside. Those types of very simple things to try to increase your light exposure from when you wake up. Before bed, same thing, but the opposite. Go to bed, get things dark before you go to bed. Have the same routine where like you have dinner and then you take a shower and you brush your teeth and you like read a book and then you go pass out, something like that. The main things are get it dark, whatever's practical for darkness. And so I think like getting blackout curtains and using as minimal lights, even though it's summer right now, right? It's June. In fact, the summer solstice is happening like tomorrow, I think. So like this is like peak summer where we get the most daylight. Trying to black out as much as you can prior to bed to simulate darkness and get as minimal lighting on as you can to function, to have your dinner. That's going to help solidify your bedtime routine and your light exposure to help get you a better sleep. Also, of course, the blue light exposure is important too. So I would try to reduce blue light, but I think simulating darkness is more practical than trying to blue light block everything. However, !health, go to tominationtime.com/health. I have a link to some cheap $10 blue light blocking glasses that are very, very strong for blocking blue light. They're not very comfortable or fashionable. They're kind of ugly, but it works. So like wearing those an hour or two before bed, along with the darkness, make it so you still function and do things. But these are the things that would apply. So if you're trying to sleep by 8 p.m., let's say, 6 p.m., I would start trying to darken as much of the house as you can, get the lights dim, put on the blue light blocking glasses, and avoid stimulation too. I would not play super adrenaline pumping games before bed. I would not be playing something crazy exciting like a MOBA game or a battle royale game or anything that gets your blood pumping. Stick to low stimulation, boring stuff. So if you play, it'd be better to not play games unless you can play like Go or chess or something. But anything, just think if it's stimulating you or not. You want to choose boring activities. So even books, even though there's no light exposure coming from a book, those can be very stimulating. I remember The Name of the Wind. It's a great fantasy book. Fantastic. Like when I read that book, I was so like, there's a big event that happens, a big WTF event that happens like a quarter way through the book. After that, I was like, oh my God, I am hooked. I could not stop reading until 4 a.m. Even then, at 4 a.m., I passed out from exhaustion, not because my brain was tired. I passed out because my body was just so physically tired from like reading because it was so exciting. So my point is, a lot of people give the advice of like, oh, don't use your device. You should instead, read a book. Okay, it's better to say avoid stimulation and choose the most low tech stuff that you can do. That being said, I personally will still read stuff. I'll read very boring, dry scientific articles on my phone on a very, very dim light. I get a screen filter app to make it even darker, and I read that to bed, and it's boring, and I fucking pass out. It's great. So those are some of the tips that I would say. So the same thing applies for like if you're working from 2:30 to 11 p.m. Leading up to bed. It's gonna be kind of hard, but try to simulate the darkness the best you can prior to sleep. And also like before going to bed, like you have the same routine of I'm going to eat and then I'm going to shower and then I'm going to dim the lights. Now there is a question here of for the shift where you end at, you start at 5 a.m. That means you have to go to bed pretty early, like 8 p.m., right? And now the next week, you're going to be going to bed at like midnight at the earliest, right? Because you get off at 11, so you might get home and, eat, shower, whatever. So you might go to bed at midnight. So the question is, should you maintain the same routine of this 2-hour routine where you like eat dinner, shower, all this stuff, and then 2 hours later you go to sleep? Or should you just try to sleep as soon as you can so you're not shifting your sleep schedule so much from 8 p.m. to midnight or even 2 a.m.? That's up to you to decide on what's going to be the best. If you should try to maintain the same routine or you should try to just shorten it and go to bed as soon as you can. My preference is I think you should try to go to bed as soon as you can on the 11 p.m. shift to keep it as close to a normal-ish bedtime of like 10-ish or 10 p.m. or something. So I think that'd be helpful. Trial and error, see what works better for you. I think also melatonin would probably help you here. Melatonin supplements, ! Melatonin. Don't superdose your melatonin. The doctor who discovered melatonin just explains it in an article. It's just look up healthydirections.com, making sense of melatonin dosing. He basically says almost nobody should be consuming over 1 milligram of melatonin unless you have a very specific need. Go for the lowest effective dose. I'm a big fan of ! Legion, #sponsored. Their lunar supplement, I think, is actually really good for this. They put a low dose of melatonin, I think like half a milligram. And I take that. If I'm going to go to bed really early, I will take that. So that is what I personally do anyway. So he says, luckily, I usually am pretty tired and fall asleep around 12:30. Okay, so that works, but you might need to sleep at like 8 p.m. sometimes, right? So do keep that in mind, right? This is gonna be some trial and error to figure out what's the best. I think blackout curtains will help control this stuff. Maybe even a sleep mask, depending on how dark your room can get. If you like the content, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Also, follow us on Twitch and leave the notifications on. Feed your brain, feed your body, and see you next time.